What's up, little psychos? I have a stack of dark romance book recommendations that I'm going to go through on this video. I just want to start off by saying that these are going to be deeper and dark romances. If there's any appetite for it, I can make a video more around dark romances for beginners, but these books are not for beginners. These books are for seasoned dark romance readers. And yeah, check your trigger warnings because things are going to get dicey. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go through each book. I'm going to give you an idea of the synopsis with the premises. I'm going to give my opinion on the book, but then I'm also going to go through Goodreads and let you know what the rest of the world is saying. Reading is super subjective. Just because I like or don't like something doesn't mean that you're going to like or not like something. So I thought maybe adding this Goodreads review component to this too would help you make, a more informed decision on whether or not you want to actually add one of these books to your TBR. I am also going to be adding my own book to this. So again, I think the Goodreads segment is going to help make that a little bit less biased and you can still make a very educated decision on whether or not you want to read my book that I'm recommending to you. Reading the 1-star reviews of my own book is going to be an experience. So please be kind. I am small and it's going to hurt. So I'm going to start with a really popular one, Haunting Adeline. If you haven't seen this yet on social media, I don't know, maybe you're new to book talk or maybe you're literally living under a rock. This is probably the most iconic dark romance book that is out there. And it is the first dark romance that I actually read when I started getting back into reading. So Haunting Adeline is always going to have a special place in my heart. Now, this is the first book in a duet. The second book is Hunting Adeline, and it is significantly darker than the first one. So if you read this one and you're like, oh, that's a piece of cake, and then you go into the second one, I've had a lot of friends be fine with this one, and then the second one was just too much for them. So just keep that in mind. And this one ends on a pretty serious cliffy. So I would recommend reading the trigger warnings for both books before diving into this duet. The premise for this is Zaid Meadows is this kind of vigilante mercenary who takes down this underground, I don't know what I can and can't say on here. It's this underground ring where people like Diddy and Epstein would be reigning supreme, if you are catching my drift. He works against these crazy groups that target children. He's walking down the street one day and he sees the FMC Adeline at a book signing, and it's insta obsession. He's super into her right away. And then he begins STALKING-ing her. And everything that unfolds from there is super schminky. He kind of forces himself on her, and it's all very non-con. A lot of these books that I'm going to talk about deal with non-con. Now, like I said, this is the first dark romance book I ever read. So when I was reading it, I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know this existed. And the thrill and the adrenaline that shot through me when I first read this book, it burned it into my brain. And then I went on an entire dark romance binge spree. I'm still in the spree. And that was 2 years ago. So my impression of this book, if I were to read it again now, I'm not sure that I would rate it as highly as I did at the time. Again, because the longer you read, the more your preferences grow and change. The writing in this is read this for the vibes. The writing is not gonna blow your mind. It's not game changing. It's fast-paced, it's quick, it's dirty, it's a fun time, but you just kind of have to turn your brain off a little bit for it as far as the writing goes. If you're looking for a literary masterpiece, this is not it. Now let's see what Goodreads has to say. So let's go. I'm gonna put the little community reviews summary here. So there's 600,000, over 600,000 ratings for Haunting Adeline, and it's sitting at almost a 4-star. So that's freaking impressive. It's clearly popular for a reason. As far as 5-star reviews go, the first 5-star review that comes up for me is, reading this book is not enough. I need to Zaid. Another funny one, after further inspection, I fear I love this book. Holy effing cliffhanger. Woo, I'm frantically knocking out this review so I can backflip into the next book. Now switching to the 1 stars. Got a lot of DNFs here. We've got a lot of reviews commenting on what I already said basically about the writing. This book was corny, it was awful, DNF at 35%. I'm seeing, so this is a kind of a pet peeve of mine with dark romance reviews, is I'm seeing a lot of negative reviews here that are based around the non-con trope that's prevalent in this book. If you don't, like, if non-con is a trigger for you, or if you don't understand how that trope is used in dark romance, you shouldn't be reading this book. I'll never understand reading a book that is clearly marketed with a specific trope and that negatively rating it because you don't like that trope and it's in the book. So I'm seeing a lot of that in here, and a lot of people saying like this was all hype, no substance. Again, sometimes I'm just here for the freaking vibes. I don't need it to be a literary masterpiece for me to enjoy a read. And I think Haunting Adeline is a good example of that. Like, there's a lot of like contradictory issues in here too. Like, if he's out here being a vigilante for SA victims, you know, like I see that criticism all the time, like why is he then turning around and doing that to the FMC? This is definitely one of those books where you just kind of got to turn your brain off, but I mean, if you're into it, you're into it. Like, it's a fun time. Now, on that note, if you are looking for a book that kind of has an actual like in-depth plot to it, I think Deathtrap is more for you. I think that's a lot of the criticism that I do get for this book. Funnily enough, on the opposite end is you'll have people who are looking for books that are just fast paced, kind of turn your brain off, jump into like the dark schmoot. Whereas like this one, don't get me wrong, like she's schminky, she's depraved, it's crazy, but there's a lot of plot as well. Like, it's thick, there's a ton of like lore in here. And let me just tell you about the premise so you can kind of make your own judgment first. So this is a dark bully paranormal romance, and the premise is that Lilith, everybody she touches is unalived. The Grim Reaper has been following her around for her entire life and refuses to allow her to make any interpersonal relationships with anybody. Like, literally, her mom, her dad, her aunt and uncle, she ends up in the foster system, and then he starts taking them out too. So when she becomes of age, she tries to get a job and on her own 2 feet as quickly as possible so that she can basically protect the people in her life from falling victim to the Grim Reaper. Now, there's a lot of twists in here, but I will say that this book takes a total left turn and takes you down a path that you're not expecting. One of the big triggers that I would like to call out for this one is anybody who has religious trauma. For some people, it's super healing, I think, to read a book where religion is like turned on its head. For other people, it could be just as like triggering. So just make sure you're checking the trigger warnings. And again, there's a lot of non-con in this book as well too. So if that is a trigger, please, like, your mental health matters, and like don't read it. Like, you don't read books that are gonna hurt you. Like, it's just don't do it. Anyway, I had a lot of fun writing this book. Also, it's really cool. I did it in on Black Pages. So if you want to check it out or buy this copy, like, this is available on the Zon, like exactly as it is. But now for the part that's terrifying me, I'm going to do the Goodreads synopsis. Okay, so this came out in October and we're at 722 ratings, so pumped about that. And it's sitting at 4.39 stars, so that's good. I'm gonna scroll down here and go to the 5 stars first, which are easy for me. Oh, and then I'm also gonna put up the community reviews here so you can see the actual breakdown of the percentages. And let's go, I'm gonna filter it. This book was awesome. I really felt like I could see the whole thing happening in my mind as I read this book. The plot twists were awesome. This was my first dive into dark bully romances, and it did not disappoint. This surprised me in all the best ways. I am screaming. I love the twists in this book. This was so messed up, and I loathe bully books. This book, though, the chokehold it had on me is unreal. So I think that's a huge compliment. But yeah, you get the gist. There's a twist in it. It's a bully book. It's depraved. It's a whole smoothie roller coaster, as Alexia said. Now for the 1 stars, I'm going to throw up. I'm so scared. Authors, we're delicate, guys. Like, we're little small guys. Okay. There's DNFs. Oh my god. Okay, this person is saying that they're sick of indie authors redoing ideas and regurgitating them. Okay, you know what? I think that's probably an assumption that this book was similar to Death's Obsession, which is another Grim Reaper kind of a romance. I wouldn't say they're similar at all, other than the fact that there's a Grim Reaper in it. Like, the Grim Reaper in Avina St. Graves is like really nice to the FMC. The Grim Reaper in mine unalives everybody she knows. Hold on, I need a couple more. I'm gonna go up to 2 stars here. This one is saying that the book was too long. Fair enough. She's long AF. And I'm seeing a lot of complaints here about how mean, about how mean the MMCs were to Lilith, which again, guys, it's literally, it says it's a dark bully romance. It's a bully romance. If you don't like books where the FMC gets bullied, I wouldn't read this one. This is not for you. I also have a bunch of non-con complaints in here too. So again, do with that as you will. Next up, Still Beating by Jennifer Heartman. This book, oh my freaking God. Personally, this book blew me away, okay? She's not as long as some of the other ones that we've already talked about on this video. And there's an alternate cover. I think this is the cover that's available now. Like this is like fully available in bookstores. You can just go to your local Barnes & Noble or Indigo or whatever country you're in and just pick it up. But this was like, I wanted this cover. I feel like it like serves the vibe of the book way better. Now, I get a lot of complaints sometimes when I talk about this book too much because there's something that happens right in the beginning that some people consider a spoiler. It is written on the back of the book, so I'm going to talk about it now and I'm going to say what happens. If you're the type of person that likes to go into a book completely blind, like fast forward, because I don't want to like unintentionally spoil you. But for those of you who are still here, I'm not going to say anything else that's not in the back of the book, just to give you an idea of the premise. So Cora, the FMC, we open up and she's at her sister's engagement party with her sister's fiance, this man, Dean. She hates Dean. She's about to go home and she realizes she can't find her wallet. So she has to call somebody to come pick her up because she's the last one at the party. The only person who answers, funnily enough, is Dean. He comes to get her after she has a weird conversation with this man on the porch. As her and Dean are driving home, lights start flashing behind them like they're getting pulled over by a cop. When they pull over, they're abducted by a crazy person who sticks them in his basement, and then he does all of these horrific, very traumatizing things to them for, I think they're trapped for like a couple of weeks. And then the rest of the book is basically them dealing with this trauma, and they form a trauma bond based off of what's happened to them in this basement. And that's like the arc of the story. This book was bananas. I read the back, so I knew that they got abducted. And when I tell you, I still had to read this book like cover to cover, almost in one sitting, because my heart was in my throat the whole time. Like I needed these people to be okay. It was absolutely insane. Like this is like a dark romance thriller almost, but then also like the healing arc is just so beautiful. I cried several times reading this. This is forever going to be one of my top reads that I've ever read, and I highly, highly recommend it. All right, so putting the community rating review up here. Still Beating has almost 150,000 ratings, and it's sitting at a 4.23, so that's really, really good. Let me scroll down here. We'll start with the 5 stars as usual. So much more than just an erotic romance. I totally agree with that. Not enough words have been created for me to be able to perfectly describe how much I love this book. This is a 5-star review that literally just says, I wasn't prepared. Like, I hope I've prepared you for this read. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the 1 stars, which I can't even imagine somebody reading this book and giving it 1 star. Oh my God, this one says 1 star. If you liked this book, cover your eyes because I'm pretty sure this is my meanest review to date. I literally can't even bring myself to read it. Look at me saying I would DNF more books this year and then still finishing this one. Where's the clown emoji when you need it? Oh, here it is. I don't know. This review is so long. This person is very angry by this book. Now that I slept on it, this book really is 1 star. Trigger warning, RAPE, miscarriage, kidnapping. So this review, I think, has a lot of their issue with it is the fact that there is like a taboo aspect to this book, and it's that the FMC and the MMC, like the MMC is the FMC's sister's fiance. So I'm seeing a lot of negative reviews around that. This is one of those instances where I genuinely question if I read the same book as everyone else. Yeah, I don't know. I'm personally not agreeing with any of these 1-star reviews. I thought this book was amazing. So again, do with that what you will. Next, staying on that thriller vibe, I'm going to talk about Better Run by Alina May. This is a pretty popular book. I'm sure you've seen this cover. It's recently received a new cover that looks like this. So if you're looking for it, this is what's gonna come up on Amazon. This is a very quick non-con, schmidnapping, and kind of like captor-captive thriller, and it's why I choose as well. So we have 2 MMCs and an FMC. This is quick, spicy, dirty, not a ton of depth, but there is depth to it. Like there is definitely like a thriller plot in there. And when I tell you, this is one of those books where like I was deep into my dark romance reading moment and I was like, what am I reading? Like, oh my, I was flipping pages. This book had me on the edge of my freaking seat. If you haven't read this yet, like, it's short and it is crazy. Like, my heart was freaking pounding in my chest the entire time I read this book. It was wild. Basically, the premise is pretty simple. Mary Jo gets schmidnapped by this man named Jaden, who brings her away to a cottage where he was supposed to just schmidnap her for like his kind of, he has this plan that I don't want to get too into because it's going to spoil the book, but it's like a revenge plan that he has against somebody else. And then he kind of ends up unexpectedly developing like an obsession with her, and like one thing leads to another and just things get crazy, and they get even crazier when Cole shows up. All right, so better run on Goodreads. I'll put the community reviews up here. We've got over 12,000 ratings and we're sitting at 3.72. So again, almost 4 stars for that many reviews, which is pretty good. For 5-star reviews, we've got, this one is for the girls who said Haunting Adeline wasn't dirty or dark enough, which I totally agree. Like, this is like Haunting Adeline, but like, put it on steroids. Deliciously non-con with lots of primal play. Definitely check the trigger warnings. This was so dark and spicy. I loved every second. This shit was pretty effing crazy. I loved it. I cannot believe that ending. I knew it was bound to happen, but I'm still shocked. So moving on to the 1 stars. 1 star, thank God that's over. Alexa plays Stockholm Syndrome by One Direction. Okay, again, literally, the Stockholm Syndrome is like an actual advertised trope for the book. So yes, it's a Stockholm Syndrome story. I'm seeing a lot of reviews on here that are, again, similar to Haunting Adeline. Like, they're commenting on how like the external story outside of the quick kind of like thriller romance wasn't like developed and thought out enough. It's a novella. If you don't like reading novellas, read longer books. That's all there really is to it. If you're looking for something quick, spicy, and depraved, I'm telling you, this book is like gonna deliver. It's totally crazy. So sticking on that why choose theme, I want to talk about the Blackwood Institute series by J. Rose. This is the 2nd book. I have the 3rd. And I also have the 1st one, but my friends and I are doing a traveling annotation book, and I currently don't have my copy of the 1st one with me. So this is what it looks like. You can also get the omnibus and have all 3 of them in one shot if you want to order it that way. But this, again, this is a dark why choose. If you want plot, this has got plot. This is set in a mental health facility, and the FMC Brooklyn has schizophrenia. So she enters this facility, and this is where she meets the 4 MMCs that we're first introduced to. So there's Phoenix, Cade, Hudson, and Eli. And Eli is my favorite. Eli is nonverbal because of the trauma that he's experienced in his past. Phoenix is this jokester, but he'll like flip on a dime. Like, he's hilarious, but he will roast you. Cade is kind of this like soft-hearted, kind soul that is almost like the glue that holds the family together. And Hudson is just a psychopath. Like, he's literally absolutely batshit crazy. Now, there's a couple of things about this trilogy that I personally really love to see. With Why I Chooses, it's really important to me that every character brings in their own flavor. They solve their own thing. They're not just carbon copies of each other, if that makes any sense. And I think this trilogy did that really, really well. On top of that, again, the plot, like, there was twists, there was turns, the mental health representation in here. If self-harm is a trigger, do not read this book. But J. Rose, I believe she actually worked in the mental health industry for a long time, so the rep is so on point, and it just really, like, this is thought-provoking. Like, yes, it's a very dark, schminky, depraved story, but it also really kind of brings up these deeper questions about how we treat people who have mental health issues in our society, the risk of these people losing like their rights when we put them in these facilities. It just brings up some of those very thought-provoking questions. I think about this series all the freaking time, and I highly recommend it if you really want to like dig into something dark and gritty and thought-provoking. Okay, I've got Goodreads up here for book 1, Twisted Heathens. This one we're sitting at a 4.05 at like over 7,000 ratings. Again, very, very good. If I go into the 5 stars here, I've got I love this book. Twisted Heathens is just that. Twisted, I read this in one sitting. It's very addicting. On my dark scale, it's light gray. I'll agree this is less dark than some of the other books that I've already spoken about in this video. But again, it's still worth it. I feel this on so many levels, every word, every page, instant connection. I felt that too, like I felt really connected to these characters. Oh my F, I love this story so much. I literally just finished it, so I need a few hours to get my thoughts in. You know, it's a good book when somebody needs to literally get their thoughts in order. Okay, so moving on to the 1-star reviews. The first 1-star that's coming up is saying DNF because the MMCs did something to an animal. I'm not gonna say what happened. This is actually one of my only triggers. Any sort of like anything to do with animals, I usually can't really do. My friends literally will like warn me usually what pages they are on and to skip it. I will say for this, it was off page. It wasn't graphic what happened. The act of actually doing it did happen, and it did kind of like take me aback as well too. But again, it's in the trigger lists and it's off page. I don't know. I agree, like, but I was fine with it. And then again, a lot of these other complaints that I'm seeing are very tightly tied to dark romance themes, which I guess is like typical here. Like we're seeing issues with non-con. Oh, I'm seeing one thing here saying it was like a little bit too repetitive in some instances with the FMC and her like planning for like self-harm. I don't know. I'm seeing most of these 1-star reviews are around some of like the darker themes. Again, go read them for yourself if you'd like to. If you are into these themes, I really think you're gonna enjoy this series. Next, Carnage by Shantel Tessier. This is, in my opinion, one of the darkest books in her series that she's released so far, next to The Sinner. The Sinner was also very dark. With this one, what I loved about it was the twist. She got me in that last half with the thriller and the twist aspects. Like some of the things that happened in this book, I would have never expected. Like they were totally crazy. Again, the FMC spends most of this book being a captive. So again, if that's not your vibe, do not read this book. There's also very graphic on page non-con but with a villain, like not a MC, and it was graphic enough that like it made my tummy hurt a little bit. So again, please proceed with caution. This book is very, very dark. A lot of this was spice too. Like if you want crazy spice, Shantel Tessier is your girl. She delivers in the spice department. There's always so much of it in every single book, and it's always so creative and out there. So if that's your jam, Carnage for sure is going to blow you out of the water. The one thing I will say is this is marketed as an interconnected standalone. So you can read this one without reading the other books. You can, yes. There were definitely instances with me reading this book, and I've read the other ones but I'd read them so long ago that I couldn't like really remember details, that I was confused. The confusion points weren't so important to the story that it like ruined the experience for me, but I would maybe recommend reading the other books before reading Carnage because it's a little bit like adjacent and they do reference all of the other characters as well too. So if you don't want to be like confused at all, maybe just sit down on like your winter break and do an entire binge of the entire series before diving into Carnage. I think the most popular one in this series is The Ritual. It's probably like the most palatable for like the general public. Like this one was schminky for sure, but it was much less dark, I would say, than Carnage or The Sinner, for example. All right, now taking a look at Goodreads for Carnage here. I'll put as always, the community ratings up here on the side. Yeah, so similarly, like I'm seeing a lot of comparisons to The Sinner. So people who loved The Sinner are obviously loving Carnage. The Sinner was my #1 book from Shantel Tessier. Carnage may have taken that spot, honestly. So not ready for the twists and turns in this book. I was on the edge of my seat reading it. I'll agree with that. Like the thriller aspects of this book were totally crazy. I don't think I'm ever going to emotionally recover from this one. Did Shantel put crack in this book? Because holy shit. Okay, moving on to the 1 stars. This one says, dumbest effing heroine ever, rocks for brain. Anyways, 1 star because I'm a hater. I agree with that. I don't think, what's her name? Ashton? She wasn't the brightest bulb in the bunch, but I mean, whatever. She, like, it fit for the story. Like, if she was any smarter, I don't think the story would have worked out the way it is. I find this even when you just read like normal thrillers, is whoever the main character is has to operate with like some level of idiocy or like ignorance, because otherwise they would just be putting shit together and there would be no story. So I'm fine with that. Let me see if I can find another shortish one. This one is saying that the storyline is poorly written, nearly impossible to follow. I'm wondering again if that was because it was marketed as like an interconnected standalone, like maybe this reader didn't read the other ones. But I found it pretty okay to follow. Again, more comments about people not liking the FMC. Some of these are just straight up mean and not constructive. I don't want to read them. But yeah, I don't know. Do with this as you will. I'm not getting a lot of like constructive like 1-star reviews from here, but I do think if you want your like badass FMC, probably not the book for you. I'm gonna switch gears here a little bit and do some MM. Distorted by Nyla K. Nyla K is one of my favorite authors ever. Like, I will literally devour anything that woman writes. The way she writes characters for me, like, I feel like they're so real and I personally connect with them. And Distorted is actually, I think For the Fans is probably most people's like first Nyla K book. Distorted was mine because I'm a dark romance junkie. But this book, holy crap. First of all, the dark level is dark. Again, we've got Stockholm, we've got non-con, and the power dynamic is insane too. It's between a prisoner and a guard. It is insanely messed up for a lot of it. And then in the end, I can't say why everything ends up working out, but it does. And the twist just totally blew my freaking mind. Blew my freaking mind. Only complaint that I have is I think the end, because of like how things ended up panning out, could have been a bit longer and fleshed out a bit more. And I'm wondering if maybe, because I think I saw like a lot of like people commenting that For the Fans was like too long or something, so maybe that was like, you know, weighing on her a little bit when she wrote this, because like I just wanted more. Like I thought this book could have just kept going for a while. Like, it was so good. And like my little baby Dash, oh, my heart goes out to him. Again, there's like mental health representation in here too. And this is a whole series. So this is the Alabaster Penitentiary series, and it's a bunch of like quote unquote interconnected standalones. Unlike Carnage, this isn't marketed as like you can read them all whenever. Like, you should be reading them in order because otherwise you're gonna spoil yourself. But what I love about this series is it's just everything is so connected, and every book is from a different character's perspective, and you see everything that happened in this book, or like anything important that happened in this book, from like the eyes of like other characters, and then questions that you ended this book with that were like open-ended. You read the other books and you're like, oh my god, that makes sense. And it's so like, I just feel like this guy, like the crazy red tape guy reading this series. And I think there's 2 more to come out. I cannot wait for them. This one and Brainwashed were my favorite in the series so far. I also like really loved Fragments. I wasn't a huge fan of Joyless, but it's so important to read Joyless to get everything. Like, it puts all of these pieces together. And again, reading is super subjective. Like, I know a lot of people where Joyless was actually their favorite. So like, don't like take that with a grain of salt. Like, just because it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite, and I would still say it was like a solid 4-star for me. Like, I still really enjoyed it. Oh, now for the Goodreads part. I don't know about you guys, but like sometimes I get like triggered reading like 1-star reviews for books that I personally loved. I get like, no, it was so good. But I will read them. I will read them for you. Give me 1 second. All right, so our community ratings up here, we've got over 10,000 ratings and we're sitting at 3.97. So again, pretty good in my opinion. So this one is like similar to how I felt. Oh my god, what in the ever loving hell did I just read? Why am I only now discovering this author? And how the hell are more of you not reading her? Another one, wow, this book was not what I expected at all. I'm not regularly surprised, but this story was so brilliantly written that even I had to take a moment to process the twists that occurred within the story. What the F was that? This woman is a genius. An evil one, I might add, because I never expected any of that. So yeah, the twist is pretty fun in this one. Okay, moving on to the 1-stars. I'm nervous. 1 star. I'm livid right now. I love the first 70-ish% so much, but then the big twist happened and I regret ever picking this book up. Yes. So we're seeing the other side of it where like I loved the twist, but the twist changes a lot of the dynamic. So if you're in it and enjoying the way things are going in like the first 70%, I can see how the twist would maybe throw you off. Okay, so this person said, I read the whole thing, but because of the disclaimer and the author begging people not to spoil in reviews, I was expecting something to pow right in my face until the last word. It didn't happen for me, and I guess the thing that was supposed to pow was obvious to me. So I think this person was disappointed again, because you have people like me being like, that twist is gonna be crazy for you, and I guess they predicted it, which, you know, could happen. I will say I was suspecting a little bit when I was reading, so it wasn't like, I think as big, like some of my friends read it and it totally took them by, and I was like, yeah, I kind of was like wondering, but that didn't ruin it for me personally. So I don't know, if you're like a book detective, like you might be able to figure out the twist, you know. The deeper I'm getting in here, the more kind of just like, again, unproductive and not, like I don't think it's like helpful for me to read some of these to you guys. But yeah, again, if you want to go and read more 1-star reviews on this book, go ahead. A lot of them are just like one sentence and they're just like, oh, it was cringe, or oh, I hated it. And it's just like, I don't know. That's gonna like help you come to a conclusion. Anyway, I'm gonna stop here for now. If you guys liked this and you guys want more dark romance recs, let me know. I want to do some LGBT queer recs as well. I'm also gonna do like dark fantasy rec videos. Basically, I'll just go through my entire bookshelf, through everything that I read, and let you guys know what's up. I don't know if you have any books that you would like me to specifically review, and I have read them. I'm taking requests, so just leave your comments below. I'm happy to go through and do that. And other than that, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for my first stint in this YouTube world over here, becoming a booktuber since all the crazy stuff that's going on in that clippy cloppy. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys got some sweet reads that you want to check out based off of this video. And until next time. Oh, also, please hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get this account off the ground and grow it. If you want to like help support a fellow book lover, but also an indie author, anything you guys can do to push the buttons like totally helps. And I love you. I'll be back.